Here it is, the ultimate crossover to end all crossovers that everyone's been asking for. Foolish Fish meets Esoterica. I cannot begin to thank Dr. Justin Sledge enough for joining me for this long overdue collaboration. In a characteristic act of generosity of both his time and knowledge, Justin reached out to me to put together a two-part interview covering the topic of our love of esoteric books from our two very complementary approaches. Historical scholarship on his side and a focus on modern publications for the practitioner on my side. If you don't know Justin's excellent YouTube channel Esoterica, then first of all let me say I'm very surprised. Esoterica is a monumental hub of really some of the best informed content out there on the topic of the history and theory of magic that manages to combine impeccable scholarship with a light-hearted, approachable manner that characterizes his style. His channel is actually one of the few for which I've activated the notification bell just to make sure I don't miss any of his content. So yes, it really is that good. Go subscribe right now if you haven't already, and you can see the other half of this interview over on his channel where he interviews me on similar topics. But for now, it's with tremendous excitement that I present for your enjoyment the interview that Dr. Sledge so kindly granted me. Let's get on with the show. Enjoy. Dr. Justin Sledge from Esoterica channel. Justin, thank you so much for agreeing to do this, in fact, proposing to do this interview. It's an absolute honor to do this with you. Yeah, let's get into these questions. The first question would be, what one book would you want with you on a desert island?
All right, so this is where we are. Off the bat, I'm going to start cheating. So yeah. I'm going to name, I'm going to name a couple and then say. So the first one is cheating. I think my answer actually is the Talmud. I think I would bring the Talmud. Of course, that's not one book; it's a bunch of books. But because it's called the Talmud, I'm gonna completely just flagrantly break the question and be like, I'm bringing the entire Talmud with me.
That's fair enough.
So yeah, so I think the Talmud. Just
wait until you hear mine.
Yeah, but I think that if there are other sort of individual books, I think I'd love to bring Schwartz's Quantum Field Theory and the Standard Model, which is sort of the standard textbook on like material reality as we know it, because I think it would take me a lifetime to sort that out. The other one that jumps to mind is Hegel's Science of Logic, the Wissenschaft der Logik. I would love that one, because it's like 800 pages long. It's massive. It's like just, reading it once, you're just more confused. So reading it again, you're more confused. And then
right, if you're adding that to the Talmud, there's going to be quite a few suitcases with you on this day.
Yeah, suitcases. Yeah, it's enough to, if whatever ship that I was on, I know why it sank. All those books just a volume of the Talmud every couple of years just washes up to shore.
Yes.
So I think Talmud. I think the Talmud, but maybe something in science or something like Hegel's Logic. I feel like I could really benefit from rereading Hegel's Logic over and over again.
Sounds nice. Sounds like you'll have plenty of stuff to be doing on this desert island. A few years, yeah. Not ready
at least
rescued yet.
No. It's when they show up to rescue me, like, oh, come get me in 2 or 3 years.
Nice. What is your favorite esoteric book in your entire collection?
So of course we're going to have a terrible time answering this, but I have to say, and this is actually going to be my answer for a couple of them. I think my favorite esoteric book, actually, and I have it here, is I have a pick it up. It's a giant tome. It looks like an old book, but this is my 1633 copy of the Martin del Rio's Disquitonum Magicarum, which I think many people don't know this is probably the single most extensive encyclopedia of magic in the Middle Ages. Many people think of Cornelius Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy, but yes. But this actually covers basically it's the largest encyclopedic text on magic from the Middle Ages. There's no modern edition of it. There's just sort of a summary that's been published. But this one's from 1633. It was originally printed in 1599 by the Jesuit Martin del Rio. But it's just, I mean, again, encyclopedic. And if you sort of, I don't know if I can show it don't want to hurt the spine or whatever, but you can see it's just the massive volume, 2
Oof.
columns, 10-point font. You can see some Hebrew in there, maybe.
Yes.
There's Hebrew, Greek. It's written in Latin, obviously. But this is, I think, my favorite book. And so there's, he quotes from Agrippa, Johann Weyer. He'll quote from Malleus Maleficarum. He'll quote from it's the most encyclopedic book about magic produced in the Middle Ages. And so this is, I think, my favorite, because it's just when the most educated person about magic decided to sit down and write a book, this was it. And it became the standard reference for inquisitors. It became the standard reference for practicing magicians. It was just sort of the standard book. But now it's completely gone into obscurity, and it's hard to find copies, obviously, but there's no modern edition. So this is my favorite, I think. It's one of my favorites.
Well, today I learned, wow, and it's beautiful as well. Goodness, that cover is gorgeous, isn't it?
Yeah, and you can still see there the latches, the little parts where the latches are still there and stuff like that. So it's a really beautiful book. I think I may do a book tour of it at some point. But yeah, it's a really cool book, and like I said, printed in 1633, so it has some heft to it too. And it's also a little dark, considering that that's right the apex of the witch trials. So probably it was also being used as part of the machinery of the witch trials, which is obviously.
Could we get the title one more time for anyone who might have missed it?
Yeah, it's called the Disquitionum Magicarum.
Okay.
The disinquisition, so the spelling out of magic. So but yeah, it's one of the famous, if you've ever heard the story about Agrippa's black dog, this is one of the earliest places where that legend appears.
Fantastic.
The black dog in the form of the devil.
Thank you so much for that.
It's a cool book, and it's, I think, relatively unknown, but it's a super interesting book.
That's great. That's very, very nice. Is this is the next question, the book that changed your life the most?
No, definitely. I don't think that one's changed my life. I will say that I think the book that's changed my life the most was probably me discovering Aristotle's Metaphysics when I was in middle school. Okay. I was in the library looking up, because all the weirdo books, like at least in the American system, all the weirdo books like Atlantis and ESP and the Occult are all in the 000s, and then philosophy starts in the 100s. And so right at the cusp of all the Bermuda Triangle books or whatever, philosophy starts right after that. And I remember looking over and seeing, this book, Aristotle Metaphysics. And I knew vaguely who Aristotle was, and I knew that metaphysics sounded cool. So I grabbed it, and I think I must have been in the 8th grade or something. And I took it home, and I had no idea what it said, but it was just the most perplexing and interesting book. And I think that set me on the path to becoming, to doing philosophy and being interested in metaphysical questions. So I would say that Aristotle's Metaphysics, I think.
Fair enough. And I can quite imagine that being a strong memory. Yeah.
Yeah. It really, yeah.
So are you suggesting that you were spending most of your time in those 00 areas?
I think as a kid, yeah, I think I spent a lot of time in the 00s, because I grew up on Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World and In Search of Leonard Nimoy. And it was all about Oak Island and ghosts and UFOs and all of that stuff growing up just endlessly interested me. And it perplexed me that no one else thought the world was as strange as I thought it was, because I thought the world was populated by all kinds of strange things. Because my diet was, all these weird shows I was watching, Unsolved Mysteries or whatever. And so yeah, I as a preteen, I haunted the 000s, just devouring anything.
Fair enough. Nice.
Aliens so yeah. So even as a kid, I was in the Esoterica mines.
Good stuff. Thank you. So there's this one, there are plenty of aspects where we've got differing areas of speciality, but there's one thing that we definitely have in common, is that we're both YouTubers. And I just wanted to hear from you what your favorite aspect of being a YouTuber was.
Yeah, I think it's this, Denny. I think it's meeting folks like you and building a community of just amazing people like you and Angela and Philip and my friend Zevi and all the people that subscribe to our channels, and just being surrounded by this really just cushion of positivity, that people that really appreciate our work and getting to meet people like you, and having just building relationships and memories.
Yeah.
There's just nothing like it.
Yeah.
To be able to reach across space and just connect with thoughtful, kind people who are deeply committed to learning, and then presenting that learning to the world free of charge, like with no, no if and like no connections and no hooks and no like, I'm going to be the guru that you need to give me a bunch of money to tell you how to. It's just, no, we love what we do. We're passionate about it. And we also just, I think, love getting to know each other and our fan bases, and just, that's just the best feeling ever.
Oh, I could so relate.
Yeah, it just makes me feel so, it just makes me feel incredibly blessed to read kind YouTube comments. And
we are lucky, aren't we? Very
it's really
lucky.
It's a very lucky, very blessed. I feel very it's great. I'd say that's just the community and the positivity, and of course there's negativity too, but and I can't speak for you, but I will say the positivity outweighs the negativity overwhelmingly.
By so far that it's barely worth mentioning. No, completely. Yeah. All right. Well, strongly agree on that one. So the next question is a good one. What's the book that you agree with the least, but still think that it's important to have?
Yeah. So, so my answer is both philosophy, because that's my training, and this may be an unpopular opinion, although we have an unpopular opinion question coming. So my unpopular opinion will be even less popular.
Okay.
I think the book that I have that I agree with the least, and I think everyone should study carefully. There's two of them. It's Plato's Republic. I find Plato's Republic just completely. I don't like any of it. I teach it every semester, and I disagree with almost every single conclusion that Plato comes to, and I disagree with almost every single way that he comes to those conclusions.
That's fascinating. Okay.
So I'm a strident anti-Platonist, I guess. And the other is Heidegger's Being in Time. I think Heidegger's Being in Time is also one of probably the most decisive philosophical book of the 20th century. And I think that there's a lot of things that are really important to learn about being in time. And I think that it's a dangerous, when people ask me sort of like, sometimes people ask me, aren't you scared to have weird occulty books in your house? Maybe it will have bad mojo. I'm like, if there's a grimoire in my house that I'm worried about the effects of, it's Being in Time.
Wow.
Being in Time is a work that worries me deeply. I can feel the force. I have two different translations. I have the German, and I can feel the disturbance, and it's like Darth Vader mentions your name. It's like I can look over there and see Being in Time, and Being in Time is like, I know you're talking about me. It's like the One Ring, or Sauron's eye just looks at me.
Yes.
So I'm like, so I see. Yeah. So Being in Time, I think, is also the other one that I find that I deeply disagree with, but I think it's really important. I think that any philosopher worth their salt needs to have a deep understanding of Being in Time, especially the second half, which gets a lot less attention than the first.
To be able to understand modern thought.
Yeah, modern thought, but also how modern thought, I think, has really gone off the rails in a lot of ways. And also just, the hinge of the book, the center of the book is Heidegger's conversation on being towards death. And when Heidegger said that what our being is fundamentally made real by death. Death is what individuates us. I think that orientation is frightening. And I think when Heidegger's writing that in the 20s, when you're staring down the barrel of National Socialism and the death that is coming, and that Heidegger was completely okay with that at some level. I think when we orient our being towards death, and we think that we're fundamentally death-oriented beings, I think that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And it terrifies me. It terrifies me. So I think Being in Time is a book that deeply, deeply troubles me, and I just don't think any philosopher worth their salt that doesn't deal with it seriously is doing the right thing.
That's a very, very interesting perspective. Okay. Thank you. All right. Moving on to maybe some lighter subjects. Pound for pound, what do you think would be the most useful book?
Yeah. So This is totally different. Not esotericism and not philosophy. This one. This is 192 pages long, and this is the American Heritage Dictionary of Indo-European Roots. It is literally a dictionary of all the Indo-European roots that we know of, and how all of these different roots. So if I open up one, right, so you can take one, the root for, so a great example is the root for the word bear, and how the word bear, where bears were hunted, went under taboo replacement, they became the brown one, basically, in many places, or medved, the honey eater.
Yes.
But in areas in which bears weren't hunted, they didn't undergo taboo replacement, and which is in Ireland and in India. And so the original Indo-European word for bear is maintained in Irish and in Sanskrit, which is crazy to think of the difference, the geographical difference.
Absolutely.
And so it's really
how useful.
So it's a really cool little book that you can look up basically any word you want that's Indo-European, obviously, and it will tell you the root of the word in Indo-European and in Proto-Indo-European, and will tell you how it developed through the various languages. Which, again, this is going back to Heidegger, if you really do think that language and reality are somehow interconnected, knowing that deep time linguistic root of words, I think is very, very fascinating. Which I think would be fascinating both for linguists, but also for magical practitioners for whom language is a core part of what they're up to. And understanding those deep Indo-European roots, I think is really fascinating. Like when you realize the word mystery literally comes from the Indo-European word meaning to shut, i.e. to close the mouth. Like that's really interesting, that it has to do with keeping silence. So I think it's a super cool book. It's like $20 or whatever American, and it's 190 pages. That is amazing.
And it contains... that's going on my wish list.
Yeah, it's absolutely worth having. And I use it constantly, because especially if you're a writer and you want to really get into the language, knowing the deep roots of, again, it only works for Indo-European languages, but learning those deep roots, I think it's super, super cool. So pound for pound, 192 pages, can't beat it.
Yeah, no, that's a great choice. That's a really great choice. I've made a few videos on my channel precisely on the power of language and how important it is to be careful with your language, not just in ritual work, but in general, right? Just the power of language, and understanding the roots and the implications of language is essential, absolutely essential. What a fantastic choice.
I agree. It's a great book. Yeah, and in Erasmus, the piece of advice I give my students in writing is this great quote of Erasmus, where Erasmus says, "It is not enough to write clearly enough to be understood. It is enough to write so clearly that you cannot be misunderstood."
Ah, yes, I like that.
Like that's classic humanism Erasmus. Don't write so clearly you're understood. Write so clearly that you can't be misunderstood.
Yes.
That
responsible for the message that's received. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, you're responsible for the message received, not for what you meant. That's
right.
It's a huge onus, but I think that's what separates genius writing from just writing.
Completely agree. Completely agree. Nice. What book needs a new edition?
Oh God. So the book I picked is, and when I think of edition, I think of critical edition, like a modern academic critical edition.
Absolutely.
And if I had my dream book, I think would be the Theatrum Chemicum. This is the famous 6-volume, not the Theatrum Chemicum Britannicum, which is in English, but it was printed in French, the Theatrum Chemicum, that was published over many years. But it's 6 volumes, and it's probably the single greatest alchemical library ever produced.
Okay.
For instance, that's the 6 volumes that Newton bought first when he began to practice alchemy. So when Newton wanted to start and practice alchemy, he bought the entire 6-volume Theatrum Chemicum, which still survives. We can still see his notes. But I think it would be the watershed moment in alchemy studies, because it would be we would get all the big players who are academic alchemy people, publish the whole thing, Latin, footnotes, extensive footnotes, translation. And I think it would be the watershed moment in pushing alchemy studies into the next couple hundred years, I would say. And so I would say that the Theatrum, and if anyone wants to look at the Wikipedia article of the Theatrum Chemicum, it has the entire table of contents for all 6 volumes, and it will blow your mind how much, and these volumes are 600 pages a piece. It is an absolutely enormous digest of basically all alchemical wisdom up to that point. And so I would say if I had my dream team, and we could throw a bunch of orc at it, I would probably do the Theatrum Chemicum. Also, I would say the Distinguitorum Magicarum also could use an addition.
For sure, clearly.
Yeah, I feel like that could use an addition, because they just redid what's his name just did the Malleus Maleficarum, and so just the brand new edition of it. So I could easily imagine Del Rio's book getting a similar kind of treatment than the Malleus.
Yeah, I mean, I'd heard obviously, I've Elias Ashmole's this one, right?
The Theatrum Chemicum Britannicum.
But that's definitely not 6 volumes.
No. That's the British. Basically, the Theatrum Chemicum Britannicum is an appendix that Ashmole wanted to make to the Theatrum Chemicum, specifically to bring all to bear all the English language stuff. So you can think about the Theatrum Chemicum Britannicum as an appendix to the Theatrum Chemicum, and he self-consciously did that. He wanted to be like, hey, we got alchemy stuff too. And so there's some great stuff in there. I think there's a couple things by Edward Kelly and stuff in that one.
Sure. Yes.
George Ripley and stuff. Yeah. So it's so people who know it often don't know there's a 6-volume text. That's the actual book. This is just the Brits tagging along.
Fantastic. Okay. I'm learning so much. Thank you. This is great. What would be your dream book to own if the sky was the limit?
Sky was the limit. Oh man. I mean, I really would like to own a 1533 first edition of the 3 books of occult philosophy by Agrippa. I think I might actually eventually end up investing in one. Kind of the couple that jumped to mind is I'd love a copy of the 1505 Crater Hermetis, which is the first time anyone ever called themselves a Hermeticist. Ludovico Lazzarelli, the first person to ever self-consciously call themselves a Hermeticist, Hermeta sum is the first time we ever see someone call themselves that. So that's in 1505 in the Crater Hermetis. I'd love to have a copy of the 1677 Spinoza Opera Postuma. Spinoza is my hero, so I make pilgrimages every time I go to Holland to some Spinoza thing, to Holy Spinoza, pray for us. And I would say maybe another thing I would love to have is the first edition of Rimbaud's Un Saison en Feu from 1873 that he had printed himself. And that poem really had a huge impact on me as a younger person. And they're still float out there, that the original version that Rimbaud printed, because no one wanted it and it sat in a barn for a long time. And so it still floats around out there. I think that one goes for a lot. But yeah, I think those are some of them. But I think that the dream book I'd like to own is probably the 3 books. I think that's the Rolls Royce of occult. That's the book. Like, if you really want to have the Rolls Royce of occult books, the original 1533 3 books of occult philosophy is the Rolls Royce of occult books, I think.
Very, very nice. Good choice. What's your book-related pet peeve?
Aside from the evils that Brill brings with their enormous prices, endnotes. I hate endnotes. Endnotes are the devil. I like footnotes because endnotes just make you have to flip to the back of the book. It's terrible. It's dreadful.
I agree so
much. Yeah, I hate endnotes. Yeah. They're just awful. Glue binding on reference books should be illegal.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it should be illegal. If you make a reference book, that it should be, and again, this is an example of it, right? This is to go back to my American heritage, Indo-European. This is an example of that sin, right? Because you're going to break. This book is meant to be opened up and stay flat. If I do that, I can hear the glue breaking. Yeah, it's awful. It needs to be, every one of these needs to be stitch bound.
Glue binding's fine for books that'll be read once.
It's fine. Yeah, for trademark it, big paperbacks or whatever, fine. Yeah. But if it's a reference book, it needs to be stitch bound. I'll pay for a stitch bound book. Also, this will be unpopular, but I don't like dust jackets. I always throw dust jackets away.
You're not alone. Many people hate dust jackets. I don't mind them when they're well done.
Yeah, if they're works of art, like the famous example of The Great Gatsby having the dust jacket that sort of started the dust jacket craze, or these really beautiful pieces of art. But I think that that's also has to do with the fact that a lot of those early dust jackets from the 20s and 30s were offset print, and so they were really beautifully printed as well. Now they're just printed on glossy paper, basically cardstock. So if they're works of art on their own, then I'm all about them, like actually, they were in the 20s and 30s.
Jacket on this one on the
yes,
on the
Ouroboros Press, because those are actually that's off printed. I bet you can feel the texture on the print.
Absolutely, it's letter print.
So
it's letter press.
So it's so when it's actually a press print or something like that, when it's actually a work of art on its own, of course I'm gonna obviously not throw that in the trash. But when it's just a random Oxford University Press, glossy on a library bound book, I don't really want that. So dust jackets also irk me sometimes, with the exception.
I can understand that. I can understand that. Yeah. What's the book that you have that you're the proudest to own?
All right. So here's where I get to be completely narcissistic. So this one. This is my hand copied copy of Aristotle's Metaphysics, right? So I copied the entire first book by hand on papyrus. So using traditional Egyptian, this is real Egyptian papyrus. I copied it by hand. So the whole thing, like you can see,
it's beautiful.
It really, and it took a long time. You can see that, you can see also mistakes. Like for instance, I spilled water on it when I was working on it. So you can see there's water damage there. I didn't fix it. I was like, oh, this is what happens to papyri.
Yes.
Like they get damaged. So I copied the whole thing. I'll unroll a little bit more, but I don't know if I'm on this shot or not, but yeah.
That's extraordinary.
So I copied the whole thing, and or at least this is the entire first book. And and again, going back to the question earlier about what book changed your life, there's the first line of the Metaphysics is quite famous, right? All people, all men by nature desire to know. And so it was like this famous line from this is actually the end. I have it upside down, sorry. But yeah, so I copied this is the entirety of Aristotle's book 1 of the Metaphysics. And so I say this is my proudest book to own, because I copied it, and it's like, this is a book roll roughly the same size that you would have gotten a book roll in antiquity. So if you were to get a copy of Aristotle's Metaphysics, it'll look something like this.
That is extraordinary, and a beautiful response to that question. How pedestrian my responses will sound.
This is very, again, I'm being a little narcissistic, but I will say this is my favorite. In a fire, I'm going to grab this. Although I have actually made a couple of these. I've sat down and made them for some universities that I've done, and it's great also because it's a great teaching tool to put in someone's hand to be like, this is what an ancient book was like. And also I mark all the mistakes I make, because I make a bunch of mistakes, and I also use it as a teaching tool to go, this is what books were. This is the mistakes that creep into books, like spelling errors, line transpositions. You leave out entire paragraphs sometimes, have to add them back in. So it's also a great teaching tool to be like, we should be, also I'll take some of this papyrus that I've written on and just set it on fire and just show how fast a roll of this goes up, and to show how precarious and how lucky we should be that we have anything from antiquity at all. People forget that all of Aristotle survived in one manuscript, one that was found in a Roman basement, and then recopied in every Aristotle we have after that's from that one manuscript. Had that manuscript just got flooded or burned, that'd have been it. Aristotle would have been totally lost. We're very lucky to have what we have. And so it was also an honor for me to take this book that had such an impact on my life and copy it by hand and really meditate spiritually on the impact it had on me, and then honor it by putting my labor into copying it, so it could teach not only as Aristotle, but teach as a book, as an exemplar book. So yeah, a little verklempt, but that's it means a lot to me.
Fantastic, beautiful work. What book needs a translation?
I think I would say that, again, I'm going to go back to alchemy, but I think the corpus of Geber. There's an entire vast library of alchemical works in Arabic that have no that are untranslated, just completely untranslated. Many of them manuscript, and I think that part of the reason I'd want it to be translated is there's just a long-standing bad idea that somehow there was classical world and then pop medieval world. And I think there's a long-standing this mistake that, and I think it's being corrected slowly, but that not only did the Islamic world keep the lights on, so to speak, but they greatly improved upon everything they inherited.
Yes.
Greek learning was greatly improved upon by the Islamic world. Mathematics especially, right? We can't even imagine, numerals.
Yes.
Right? We call them Arabic numerals for a reason. Of course, they got them from the Indians, but algebra, alchemy. And so I think that really highlighting the enormous library of alchemical and scientific works in the Islamic world, we should just throw a lot of work at that. So that's the one thing I would say that needs to get translated. I think the other thing that needs to get a new, better translation is a lot of the other Gnostic texts that aren't Nag Hammadi. There are translations of them. A lot of them are really old, but the Bruce Codex, the Askew Codex, the Codex Sakos, those all I think need new editions that are solid, and new translations. So
right.
Nag Hammadi gets all the press, but they're
there's a very flashy story to go along with it, and it's
right.
It certainly has had a lot of press. But yes, that's nice. That's nice. Yeah. Okay. And maybe to a similar point, actually, a foreign language book that you can't access due to the language.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a whole bunch, but it's Arabic. I mean, Arabic is a language I wish I had. Yeah. It's, I can read clumsily some Arabic, but I really wish I had Arabic. It's just one of these languages where, I have Hebrew, I have Greek. I have a lot of them already, but yeah, Arabic is one that's really a big gap that I would love to have.
I made a video a couple of weeks back talking about the different, what books to read if you want to get into this, that, or the other current. And when I came to the Arabic current, there's so little out there in terms of magic books that have been translated into English. And there's the Shams al-Maharif, which has just recently been translated in the past couple of weeks. It was just recently released.
Right, and it's not complete. It's only some sections.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And
Liana Saif is really going to do extraordinary, and is doing extraordinary work in that way. She's, her book on the Arabic impact on occultism is really indispensable, and she's rendering the Picatrix.
That's right.
From Arabic to English. So she's going to be, thank God for her. She's going to do, she has done, and she is going to really do super important work. And she's now in Amsterdam. So, I'm absolutely cheerleading her work. It's 100%. So important.
Yeah. She's the one that I ended up referring everyone to, of course.
No, she's great. She's great, and there's not many like her. So
That's right.
We should all be cheerleading her work, and hopefully in the generation that comes there'll be 10 more like her, because there's so much to be done, and obviously no one person should have the onus of having to do all of it.
Yes. So the next question is going to be an interesting one. You are a man of great scholarship, and your knowledge and understanding is really certainly peerless within my knowledge. Are there any areas of knowledge that you feel like you should know more about? Because when is there not, right? But are there any areas where you have a lacuna that you feel you should really see to?
Oh, yeah. So basically anything in occultism after 1950.
Right.
All of it. I have no idea. It really is. I mean, it's really embarrassing. I just don't, I'm conversant with Crowley. I know a little bit about, but after 1950, I don't know anything that basically happens. I know some of the figures, I know some of the names, but I have completely, embarrassingly little knowledge of occultism after 1950. So that's a thing I have to fix, and I don't know how I'm going to fix it, but that's one. I also say theosophy. Blavatsky, really.
Yes.
I've just never read Blavatsky. I mean, I've read, you know, snippets and things like that, but I've never really done the whole Blavatsky run. Gurdjieff, those kinds of folks, they just don't know a ton about them. I just don't know. Tarot, I know nothing about tarot.
Right.
Like I literally know it is a divination tool based on cards, based on like Renaissance card games. That's it. That's the extent of my knowledge of tarot.
Okay.
I think I don't even think I could even recognize most of the cards if someone showed them to me, except for maybe some of the more famous ones of the Fool or whatever, you know, walking off the cliff, or the Magician, right? But aside, if someone showed me another one, I'm like, I have no idea what that is. So I would say that my guilty lacuna, the lacunas in my knowledge, tarot, occultism after 1950, and really the world of Blavatsky and that form of theosophy. So yeah, it's embarrassing. Okay. And I think that I have but Denny, I'll tell you, I have an excuse. Here's my excuse. This is my my desperate attempt to redeem myself. I think the reason why that gap exists is because I think many people who get knowledge of esotericism and the occult primarily get it because they're practitioners, and they're practitioners coming into the world of practice, which is largely a sort of post 1950s kind of world. They're coming into Thelema or Wicca or whatever, and so typically they land in that world, and then they work their way back in time to fill the gaps back in time. Because I'm not a practitioner, I never landed in the world of practice much, or at all really, and because I don't have that, I didn't enter into the world of studying Hermeticism or the occult or whatever that way. I started from way back in late antiquity, actually, with the Corpus Hermeticum and Gnosticism and alchemy and stuff, and I worked my way forward, and it just so happens that I just haven't gotten to the 1950s yet.
Yes. Yes.
So that's my excuse. It's not a very good excuse, I think. So what is it? Some excuses explain but don't justify.
Right.
So
right.
It explains, but I'm not claiming it justifies.
I'm hearing you saying that it's not a very good excuse, and here am I, like, there's magic after 1950, and I know a little bit of that, right? I know a tiny bit of the magic after 1950s. And you're talking about, everything before 1950s, no problem. It's what's after 1950s.
So I shouldn't say no problem. I say I have a much better handle on it.
A little bit that's after 1950s. So
yeah. And I don't want to pretend like I have some giant handle on everything back behind that. No, definitely not. But they're just weird things, like, again, like tarot, or someone's like, you should do an episode on tarot. And I'm like, I don't know anything about tarot. Like, because it's not the kind of, I think people often know about tarot because they do tarot, and then they get interested in the history of it and things like that. So I think it just has, it's a weird artifact of how I approach the study of esotericism from an academic as opposed to a practitioner lens, which, again, practitioner lenses are often incredibly scholarly. People like Stephen Skinner, people like yourself, people like Aaron Leach, they're great scholars of this stuff. So I don't never hear that I'm putting those two things in sort of dichotomies. Definitely not. Don't want to do that.
When you inevitably do look into tarot, I think you might be surprised at how much it is used as a method of divination, but is very much considered, at least by groups who are interested in Thelema and in the Golden Dawn, as I think Alistair Crowley talked about it as a notaricon of Kabbalah.
Right. So I know that it sort of maps. That's part of the whole part of the Hermetic Kabbalah, is mapping a lot of this stuff onto Kabbalah. So you have seen that. It often, when I've seen that in sort of the big Golden Dawn book or whatever, I look at it and I'm like, I have no idea why they're doing that. It just perplexes me. But yeah, it's one of those things I have to get a better grasp on, and I'm looking forward to doing that. And even monkeys fall from trees, and
yes, sure.
It's just a gap. It's just a gap.
You're going to like my most often recommended book when we do the opposite interview.
Oh yeah. Okay. I think what's going to happen to me is we're going to end up both buying a bunch of books after this.
Yes, for sure. I can't afford this interview.
It's like some booksellers about to make a lot of money because of this.
Yes.
We're secretly drones for Amazon.com or whatever.
That's right.
That's funny. We
Well,
just have to make sure to make it so that people click on stuff that that we get a cut somehow because we're buying each
oh
other's
hell
books.
yes, yes, absolutely. Yes, yeah. Certainly on the video that on this video I'll have a load of links down below. Absolutely,
Yeah.
Go and check them out. I will link anything that I can find that is currently in print. Nice. Well, actually, to the point of what I was just saying the book that I recommend the most often. What's the book that you recommend the most often?
So it's, I guess, three books I find myself recommending all the time are the Guide of the Perplexed, the Western Esotericism Guide of the Perplexed by Hanegraaff.
Okay.
It's just, if someone wants just sort of the one book to know what we mean by Western esotericism, I think it's a fantastic book. The bibliography alone in that book is worth the price of the book.
I don't even know it. Okay.
It's the Guide of the Perplexed, Western Esotericism by Walter Hanegraaff. Just like I said, the bibliography is just worth the price of the book. It's fantastic. He has an axe to grind in it, but whatever, doesn't everyone?
Who doesn't?
The other book I say is that the book Secrets of Alchemy by Princip. It's the best history of alchemy from the historiographic camp, which is the actual history of alchemy as a practice in history, as opposed to the more romantic ideas that sort of get attached to alchemy. And then the other book I find myself recommending all the time is this is completely unrelated, but it's Kelly's Hebrew grammar book. A lot of people want to learn Hebrew for whatever reason. I think Hebrew is one of these languages that a lot of people want to learn, especially practitioners.
Yes.
And Kelly's book for learning Hebrew is, in my opinion, someone I teach out of. It's one I learned Hebrew out of. And it's the best because literally within the first chapter, you're not only reading Hebrew, but you're reading real sections from things like the Bible. So it's not just like random letters. You're really reading Hebrew really quickly. And so it's in my opinion the best book to learn Hebrew out of. I don't know why so many people want to learn Hebrew, but many people do, and I recommend it as the best for learning classical Hebrew. Hebrew.
Sure.
So that's the one I recommend.
Great recommendation. Okay, and it's extant, is it? It's currently in print.
Yep, all three of those are in print. Yep, they're all three, and I think they're all relatively inexpensive. I think they're all less than $20-$30.
Super. All right.
It'd be really mean to recommend $700 Brill books.
Yes.
Not that I don't do that all the time, but try to. Yeah, it's a great book. It just costs. You just need to mortgage your house to get it.
Yes. Yeah.
But those are all relatively, if you can find it. Yeah, but those are accessible, and I think I tell people if you really want to get one book on Western esotericism, I think it's the Hanegraaff is, in my opinion, the most accessible book. Also, I will say this, and this isn't a question that we asked each other, but I think it's a great question we should have put in here, is what kind of book would you want to write or put together? And my answer to that actually is one thing I really want to pitch to a publisher. So any publishers out here who are listening to this,
No doubt.
who knows, but I'd love to put together a Western esotericism reader. There isn't a good Western esotericism reader out there. It's just weird. There are all kinds of other readers, but there just isn't a good 500-page introduction to Western esotericism reader that would cover theosophy, alchemy, Kabbalah, Hermeticism. It's totally doable, and I don't know why one doesn't exist, but I would love to work with a publisher to put together a really, with modern editions and footnotes and all the the whole thing. Yeah. So that's a thing I'd love to do.
Yeah, nice idea. Look forward to seeing it, Justin.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Yeah. I'll let you know.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, any publishers out there, you want to do this, I would love to work together on making a Western esotericism reader. It'd be a lot of fun.
Nice. Yeah. What's your inbox for sure?
Yeah.
All right. The next one's a big one. And I wonder if you've cheated on this one as much as I'm intending to cheat on mine. Your top 3 occult books for your shelf.
Oh, okay. What are the top 3? So there's actually, one of these is a reprint, or there's a redo. So one is the Secrets of Alchemy, of the Princip book again. So I think that's a really, if you're going to have a book on alchemy, that's the one. And I think that anyone interested in the occult needs to have a book on alchemy. That's the one I would recommend having. The second one's a cheat because it's 8 volumes, but it's The Magic and Experimental Science by Thorndike. It's inexhaustible. It's not up to date. There's lots of, it's older. It's made primarily in the 20s. There's still a lot of things in there that need to be updated, and there's gaps that Thorndike didn't know about. For instance, he just misses CLM 849, the Munich Necromancer's Manual, for whatever reason, in his like grand overview of every magical book he could find in manuscript. He just missed that one for whatever reason. So there are gaps in it. But I will say that there is no comparable book in existence to The Magic and Experimental Science by Thorndike. It's 8 volumes. It's inexhaustible. If I want to make an episode, I just open a random page, and there's an episode for Esoterica. Wow. It's just so much in there. And I will say that sometimes you can get it at library sales. I got mine for like $250 at a library sale, so you can get it. But I would say it's really, really, really inexhaustible. I guess the other one I would say,
is there a modern edition of this?
There's no modern edition. There's no, if you want one, you have to get the original printing of it. You can get I think you can get reprints of it on some of these websites that do reprints of books. I think you can get sort of the paperback reprints of it that get printed in India or whatever and shipped.
Yes.
So I have many of those, so that you can get it that way. But yeah, the Magic and the 8-volume Magic and Experimental Science, I think and it covers everything: astrology, magic, alchemy, just anything. It just covers, and it starts from late antiquity and goes all the way up until Newton and the Renaissance. So it's just incredibly good. You can even see it in esoteric episodes. It's probably the books just right underneath. It's the books behind the Japanese puzzle boxes. If you see an esoteric episode, it's the books behind the puzzle boxes. And the other I say that I recommend all the time is Vandenbroek's Gnostic Religion and Antiquity. I think every person who wants to do esotericism needs to get a good grounding in Gnosticism. And I would say that Gnostic Religion and Antiquity is probably the best single volume study of Gnosticism, synoptic study of Gnosticism, from text to beliefs to the various schools of Gnosticism, everything. So I would say that that's my go-to Gnostic book. I've gone through like 2 copies of it. I've read it so many times, so it's one of those. But those are 3. I think alchemy, magic, astrology, and then Gnosticism, I think, would be the 3. Those are the top 3 occult books. Those are the ones I tend to reference over and over and over and over again.
Okay.
I know that's not quite the answer. That's sort of like, book 4 or whatever, I think would be maybe another, I think maybe for the more practitioner side of thing or something, right? The blue brick or whatever it's called. But not being a practitioner, of course, I have the blue brick and I do look at it from time to time. But did you notice that there in the new edition of Liber ABBA, there's all kinds of spelling errors? Did you notice that by chance?
The in the blue one?
Yeah, in the new one, especially in Hebrew, there's several spelling errors in Hebrew.
Oh, really?
I noticed it's like just like bets and kofs look really similar to sometimes to people, and I'm like, nope, that's a different letter. You need to have that spelled right.
Okay. I know that Dr. Stephen Skinner, excuse me, has also done an even newer edition, I guess.
That's the one. That's the one I'm talking about. The new one.
That's the one.
I'll show you some if it matters. But it's a great edition.
Okay.
But there were like spelling errors. But like I said, it'd be book 4 maybe if I were a different person. But those are the 3 at least.
Okay.
Alchemy, magic, astrology, and Gnosticism. Pretty heavy hitters.
Nice. Great choices. Okay. And more books for my wish list. All right. Okay, so here's one that I'm quite excited about. You agreed to show an esoteric object.
Yeah. Okay. Are we not going to do the unpopular opinion? I'm scared of that one.
Oh, the unpopular! I totally skipped it. Let's do that.
We skipped it. Okay, let's do that one because I need to get pilloried at some point.
Yeah. Bring it on.
This is where I get to watch my subscribers just begin to dissipate rapidly.
That's it.
But all right. So unpopular opinion. I think that Jung was basically wrong about everything. I don't think the unconscious.
that.
I don't think the collective unconscious is real. Like his works on Gnosticism are really bad and like badly. He's wrong about Gnosticism. He's categorically wrong about alchemy. It's like bad. It's interesting. I think his reads are really fascinating, but he really badly misread alchemy. And I will say that he's done a real disservice to the study of alchemy, because the amount of people that come to my channel angry at me because they think that alchemy is about spiritual or psychological transmutation, and not about the historical practice of alchemy, which really was trying to transmute substances, not just lead into gold, but many substances. I think it's done a real damage, and I think that damage is still being felt in the historiography of alchemy. I think that part of that damage lies in the lap of Jung. So this is where I'm going to get all kinds. I'm going to get occult canceled. I really disagree with Jung. I have his books on alchemy. I read them. I study them. I'm going to make videos about them eventually, and I will make those videos from a sympathetic point of view, which is to say, I do think it's important to present his ideas sympathetically. I will never ever, present people, just make fun of them. I'll never do that, or just present them as wrong. I won't do that. But I do think, in my heart of hearts, I think that Jung was wrong, and I think that error has had pretty powerful negative ramifications on the study of alchemy and Gnosticism since, actually.
Unpopular opinion.
It's like, hey, what am I gonna do? It's like give a fake answer?
Yeah, for sure. No,
it's gonna be unpopular. I'm sure
beautiful answer.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be unpopular, but I have to, I'm not gonna fib.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I'm not gonna fib. Oy.
We'll deal with the repercussions.
Yeah. Oh man, I might have to look for another job. My YouTube days may be over.
Good stuff. All right. Let me see. Have I skipped a bunch of these?
No. I think that we're now the book that you should own. Yeah. Then I think it's a show and tell.
Okay, here we are. So yes, okay. Do you have an object that you'd like to show us?
Yeah, so I have a silly thing that I like. I have these sort of religious rules around occult stuff, because I try to be mindful of my traditions. But one of the things that came up for sale recently, and I just kind of had to get it because it's sort of completely silly, but it's this. It's gonna make a big mess, but whatever. Now, I know that it just looks like a burnt piece of wood, and it is a burnt piece of wood, but it is a burnt piece of wood from the oratory of House Boleskine, where Aleister Crowley performed the Abramelin, or kind of performed it.
Yes.
So I know Keith Reddy and some of the guys over there at the Boleskine House, and I was like, okay, look, I'll give you a couple bucks, donate some bucks to the restoration of it. So I think I don't know about you, Denis, but when I think of sort of watershed moments in the history of modern occultism, I think that Abramelin, his early attempts at, despite the fact that it was interrupted by, wonderful Golden Dawn drama that needs to be a movie. Sure. But his life just needs to be like it's like Lord of the Rings, but it's just, Per Durabo, the movie. Yes. The Netflix series. But yeah, I just feel like if they have a cool occult thing, like, if there is a such thing as magic or whatever, and if it can soak up in a place, and then I think Boleskine is a place that's super saturated with.
Oh yes, for sure.
With some pretty strong mojo, and maybe this piece of the burned cinders of Crowley's oratory, and Jimmy Page was there, and all the things. So that's my esoteric, my occult object.
That's incredibly cool.
So I don't know if it has any bad mojo or not, but if I fall down the stairs or anything, I know what to blame.
Yes.
You, Crowley, you opened the door and you didn't close it. Now it's in my house.
Now look at my stubbed toe. Yes.
Yeah, look at that. I guess it's like nothing's my fault anymore. I'm like, yeah, I made bad investments. Damn you, Crowley. Charon zone is the blame.
Nice. Very, very nice. Good choice. Good choice. All right. Slightly different topic, I guess. Your favorite, slightly different topic. Your favorite fiction book.
Yeah, I have a difficult time reading fiction. I don't know if this is the thing that you have, but I just like I have to make a real practice of it. Yeah, at nighttime, actually, my reading at nighttime is fiction. Although now I'm actually reading speaking of Proudest, I'm reading the Kaczynski biography of Crowley, which reads basically like fiction. I don't really,
Sure.
it's hard to believe all that crazy stuff happened, but so it's great. But I think a book that really made an impression on me that I read recently is For Whom the Bell Tolls by Hemingway. Yeah, that book made of like the Spanish Civil War really is a thing that is an event in history that lingers really big in my mind. It was sort of like the war that prefigured the 20th century in many ways. And the Spanish Civil War looms heavily in my mind in a lot of ways. And I think For Whom the Bell Tolls is an interesting sort of take on that. So I don't know if it's my favorite book of fiction, but it's a book that sort of lingers in my mind as an American for whom the Spanish Civil War, it means a lot. That's a place and a time that I study a lot just because, fascism frightens me. And to see, how it developed in its cradle is really important. So that's a book that really made an impression on me. Maybe I'll say this, maybe I have an aspirational answer for this question. My aspirational answer is I want to be the person who's so cool that I read William Faulkner. Like William Faulkner is like because he's from Mississippi, which is where I'm from. And one day, because I've tried to read William Faulkner, and I'm like, this could be written in Mandarin Chinese for all I'd understand it just the same. So yeah, it's like, I really want to be able to be the kind of person that can read, I know, Proust or Faulkner, the sort of modern literature, but I just don't have the chops for it, man. I don't have the skills. And Proust is just like, it's just like if you have enough Proust volumes, you could build an entire house.
Yes.
With like 3 Proust books. So that's the kind of stuff I want to be able to read. So maybe my answer is aspirational, but yeah, I don't have a great answer.
That's nice. That's nice. Something about you that viewers may be surprised to know?
Aside from the Jung thing?
That ship sailed.
Yeah. Can't use that one again. What's the thing that I think? So I guess maybe I'll relate this back to my YouTube consumption. That I don't consume any YouTube aside from people like you that I know and or Angela folks that I know. But when I'm actually watching YouTube, I'm typically watching super technical stuff. So for instance, my big YouTube binge that I've been like really, really in love with recently is I've been watching a series where a YouTuber builds a Nintendo emulator from scratch in assembly. And
wow.
Yeah. And I just I grew up programming and I never got good at it. My friends are all really like professionals now, like really high level, working for really high level folks in the computer world. And they're really geniuses at programming and computer science. And we all programmed as kids and, learned BASIC and QBasic and C and C++ or whatever. And so I still have a love for it, but yeah, just like I totally geek out watching a guy talk about memory addresses for 45 minutes and talking about, illegal commands. And
you may have just redeemed yourself in many Jungian aficionados' eyes.
Yeah, I don't believe in the collective unconscious, but I do believe in illegal memory addresses.
Yes,
that's just what the collective unconscious is. It's just all the illegal memory addresses that you inside of our consciousnesses.
Nice.
But yeah, I love super technical stuff like that, like and also vintage computer stuff like the 8-bit guy. And I really it's like my nostalgia tripping. It's like, oh yeah, I really I remember working on a Tandy 1000, like typing out basic games from like magazines that took you 3 hours that were like crappy. So that's the kind of stuff I really love. Yeah, that's like a thing that maybe people wouldn't know that, like that I, if I had my druthers, like one day I really want to buy like an old Amiga or like a Tandy 1000 and just like program in BASIC.
Nice. All right, we're coming close to the end. What's a book that you own? Maybe what do you read as a guilty pleasure?
Guilty pleasure.
Yeah,
It's like Nicholas Sparks books. No.
I don't know who that is.
Oh, and he writes these like super cheesy. I really don't read them, but he writes these like super cheesy like teenage romance books.
Okay.
It's funny because I have in all of my pessimism books, I have one of his books called A Walk to Remember. It's like this hilarious. Has like Mandy Moore in the movie and stuff.
Okay.
Anyway, that's not what I actually read for guilty pleasures. I think probably like Lovecraft, I think is my guilty pleasure. Because it's just so ridiculous, and it scratches that esoteric itch a little bit. And I'm actually giving a talk at the Necronomicon, which is just so perfectly named.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I'm gonna,
yes, it is.
yeah,
Isn't it?
It's perfectly named. It just names itself actually.
Yes.
So I'm going to be giving a talk actually at the Necronomicon and at the BruceCon, which is actually in Detroit this year, Bruce Campbell Con.
Okay.
And I'm going to be talking about sort of the what would a Necronomicon actually look like if we were to find one? Like, what would the book actually look like given the historical reality of these kinds of books? So I think Lovecraft.
Nice. Where will the
pleasure.
Necronomicon be?
It's always in Providence.
Okay.
Yeah, it's always in Providence in Rhode Island. So, in fact, the only time I've ever been to Providence, I forego everything else and just did the H.P. Lovecraft self-guided walking tour.
Nice.
To go see where all this stuff. So yeah, I think Lovecraft is probably my guilty pleasure. Just because it's so like purple, it's so Baroque and
so purple as well.
Yeah, just so and it's so easy that someone could write in Python. I think just a H.P. Lovecraft story generator, where it'd just be the gibbering void of gibberish, insanity. It would just generate Lovecraft stories. Because have you seen this one that generates Kant? It's like a Python script that generates random sounding Kant things. It's absolutely perfect.
Yes.
You could just generate Kant sounding things with this Python script. Surely one could do that with Lovecraft.
Very nice. Very, very nice. Okay. Do you have an answer for this one? A fictional gateway to Esoterica?
It had, for me at least, it was Poe, Edgar Allan Poe. I mean, it was Poe. It was, and I will even say I will look at it even better than that. It was The Fall of the House of Usher.
Ah, sure.
Like when I remember like in 8th grade or something, reading The Fall of the House. At the same time, I was like looking at the 000s in the library, right? I'm also like, reading The Fall of the House of Usher.
Yes.
And there's just something so atmospheric about that story. And there's that moment in the book, in the story, where they go through and they talk about the kind of things they're reading. And he and Usher are reading, and there's this list of all these super creepy books like the Directorium Inquisitorum and Belphegor by Machiavelli and all this and this. And the way that Poe describes these books as like insanity inducing and terrifying and hidden and occult or whatever.
Yes.
There's just something about the way that he made that world so spooky and made these books so crucial to the story, and they're so mysterious and weird. And so for me, that just like scratched that itch of like, oh, I gotta find out what are these books. Yes. What is the Belphegor of Machiavelli? What is the Directorium Inquisitorum of Nicholas Emmerich? I must know. These books are terrifying. And that never went away. Like I have the Directorium Inquisitorum like right there.
Wow.
Like like in a reprint, I have it like right there. It's an Inquisitor's manual. In fact, it's one of the earliest after Bernard Guise. And so, yeah, to me, the fictional gateway was Poe.
I remember reading it at a similar age, except that I had assumed that all of those books were fictional.
Yeah,
I
didn't matter to me. I was like all about trying to find what they were, and I looked them up in the encyclopedia at school, and it was really a detective hunt to find out what these books were and who was Nicholas Emmerich and this guy Machiavelli who was supposed to be so evil, and so yeah, that was really the gateway. Also, I will say this, that his name is slipping my mind now, but the director that did The Haunting of Hill House and The Haunting of Bly Manor, and the new Midnight Mass movie, which is show, which is fantastic.
I've not seen it. I've heard a lot of good though.
Oh, it's amazing. Midnight Mass is just, you got to watch it. It's fantastic. The Haunting of Hill House is probably the best horror thing I've watched in many years. Like one of the best tracking shots just ever done.
Oh,
like
really?
a 15-minute long tracking shot taking place at 2 different time periods. Amazing. But at any rate, he's making the Fall of the House of Usher. That's gonna be his next project. He's shooting it now, so I'm like looking forward to it in a big way. So it's close to my heart. Yeah, I've also done my Poe pilgrimages when I go to Baltimore and other places. Again, it's funny because I think of myself as not a superstitious person, but I'm a pilgrimage person. I really go to places and go to these pilgrimages. I'm a very pilgrimage oriented person. So when I go to a new city, I'm like, all right, where's Edgar Allan Poe live there? I have to go
Yeah.
I want to stand in the place that Poe, or Machiavelli's house. Actually, I also made a pilgrimage to his house in outside of Florence, which is now a restaurant, which is really weird. You can like eat in the room where he wrote The Prince.
Okay.
It's like you have your fettuccine and there's Machiavelli's ghost over there. So it's funny. Ditto also the house that Nicolas Flamel built, the famous alleged alchemist. It's also it's the oldest standing house in Paris and also a restaurant. So next time you're in Paris,
Paris,
in your homeland,
not been to Paris in the past 20 years. It sounds like I need to pay a visit.
Go to the Nicolas Flamel house and get something to eat. It looks like pretty posh food, so I don't know. But apparently it's Nicolas Flamel themed, so I don't even know what that means.
All right.
There you go. You could have a whole tour of occult places turned into restaurants.
Yes.
So
nice.
Poe, absolutely Edgar Allan Poe. The Fall of the House of Usher is like the ground zero for me.
Good stuff. Very, very good stuff. And then the last question. This is I know it's not really a question that is central to your interest, at least modern publishers maybe, but what is your favorite publisher if you have one?
My favorite, I will say publisher, because I know that, Ouroboros Press, I know William over there, and he's a really great guy, and he puts out really nice volumes. And there's just been talking to what's his name, gentleman in Canada who also puts out really, really beautiful volumes. So it's just one of those things. Also, it's you may know
Gabriel McCowry from Anathema Publishing.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. Gabriel, and he and I have been chatting, and we're going to chat next week. And I'm just blown away by the quality of the books that these folks make.
Yes, some of my favorite.
No, they're beautiful. Just really breathtaking volumes. I think that when I think of a publishing house that I would love to publish with, if I had my druthers, it'd be Hackett. Hackett is it's worker owned. The workers at Hackett own it. They make decisions around who they publish and what they publish. So it's very democratically run. They publish really high quality volumes. Their volumes are like really great, especially for students who are they're like very proletarian books. They're meant to be read, and you can tear them up and they're like cost $8 and you can buy another one. And so Hackett volumes they're printed on acid-free paper, so they do last, but their introductions are often really, really good. Like for instance, the introduction to their version of the Parmenides is worth it just for that. Even if you don't read the Plato dialogue, the introduction is really, really well done. And the other thing I will say about Hackett is that they put out really high quality books that are inexpensive. And this is a lesson for those people at Brill. I'll beat my drum.
See how it's done.
Yes, you can produce high quality books that are inexpensive and well done. So I think again, to go back to my idea, if anybody out there from Hackett watching, I'd love to do an occult Western esotericism reader through something like Hackett. But and again, this is, I guess I'll say this, Denis, in talking about favorite publishers. Thank you so much for the work you do to make that information available to people like me and other folks out there. Like the work you do every week to let folks know what's going on, to get exposure to these various publishing houses and the work that they do. I am super thankful for that, man.
And
Very
I'm very
thankful for
flattered.
that.
It's
So
a
I tell you,
great
I watch them. I absolutely watch them, and they are, yeah, so I really appreciate that. So thank you for exposing me and actually educating me better on the world of contemporary occult publishing. So something a lacuna that I have, that I'm really, really glad to have a person doing the heavy lifting out there to help me fill it. So
I'm very, very flattered that you watch my videos at all, Justin, and
no.
and delighted that they can be of use. That's wonderful. Justin, thank you so much for spending this time with me and with all the viewers from the Foolish Fish channel, who invariably love what you do. If you're on the Foolish Fish channel and you don't know about Esoterica, naturally the links are down in the description. Justin, your answers have really been illuminating. As I say, I'm going to have a very full cart for the foreseeable future after this conversation.
Yeah, we're both about to spend some money. Yeah. Well, Denny, thank you so much, and thank you for the work that you do. And it's so great to be able to like bond and nerd out over,
yes,
in my opinion, the most important technology that might exist.
There we go.
It's like, what better thing to bond over than this wonderful technology that, it's a mind outside. It's a prosthetic mind and prosthetic memory that reaches across the ages and can make our lives better. Just thank God for these books and for the people that make them and publish them. And my thanks go out to them.
Who watching our channel could possibly disagree? Yep, absolutely.
So all right. And also, let me say this: you're knocking on the door of 100,000, man.
Oh,
I am so rooting. Hopefully it'll already have rolled over by the time this maybe comes out. And God, you deserve it, man. I am so
Thank you so much. I'm extremely excited. You passed the 100,000 a few months ago already, haven't you?
Yeah.
And recently celebrating 2 years on YouTube. Very, very exciting stuff as well. Do you have anything on the horizon that you'd like to mention or share?
Nothing really. I mean, I think that I'm going to be doing some traveling this summer, so I hope to get to see some folks abroad and giving some talks at these various cons, which is just a really fun thing to do, to go to Lovecraft cons or Bruce Campbell con. And it's so fun because and I don't know how you feel, but this esoteric stuff can just kind of get dour and too serious, and just like, it can be so much fun, and we should just have fun. And like, that's one of the great things about hanging out with folks like you. And it's just like, we can be really serious about what we're doing, and also we can not take ourselves super seriously and just have a lot of fun with what we know and our love for this knowledge. So yeah, I think that's just really looking forward to making connections as COVID sort of kind of gets under control, and just meet some wonderful folks like you and other folks just in person. Just really looking forward to that.
That's what it's about. Very, very nice. Thank you again, Justin. See you very soon.
Thank you, brother.
Take care. See you. Bye-bye.
And there we are. Thanks once again, Justin, for such an interesting conversation. I hope those of you watching enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed taking part in it. If you want to see the other part of this interview, where Justin is interviewing me, just hop over to the Esoterica channel, where you'll be able to see the whole thing by now. Thank you to every single viewer watching right now. Don't forget to leave a thumbs up on the video. It helps it get seen by other people. And if you haven't subscribed already to either the Foolish Fish channel or the Esoterica channel, I strongly encourage you to do so. As I was saying at the beginning, and as you've been able to notice throughout the interview, Justin is a mountain of fascinating knowledge, and I really would expect that anyone interested in the Foolish Fish channel will be enchanted by what they find on Esoterica. Really one of the best channels out there. Thank you so much for watching, and see you very soon with another video. Take care of yourselves.